but certainly technique is a major part of the kids who I've seen that are getting injured, and often some of them are in a technical change. So tennis being such a technically based sport, and kids with their technical skills, that's either going to be the ceiling or the elevator, whether they're able to continue to improve or not. And I'm excited to talk today with both Dr. DeRosa and Dr. Romano. And we thank you guys for everything you're doing for a lot of the kids and in the area, and especially for a lot of the players that I've been able to send your way. They've all recovered and improved very quickly. So before we get to Dr. DeRosa, over to you, Dr. Romano. Excited to have you back on board for a second follow-up.
Excited to be here as usual, Conrad. You guys run a tight ship, and it's always nice to work with serious coaches and athletes. And I think your program should not take it for granted that you guys are not just technique based. You're not just forward thinking about how much better a player could be, how many hours spent on the court. Because, like you said, as an former elite player and as an elite coach, the injury has gone up significantly, and not just in tennis, but in most sports. So the whole term forced recovery came about, I'd say, probably 10 years ago with us, and in just recognizing the uptick in these injuries. Now, you talk about something like the wrist injury going up, and I'm sure we could do some kind of a data entry as to what percentage. Um, and we also spoke last time regarding the different types of clay, different types of rackets, and the different types of sizes that we're dealing with as far as the kids today compared to, let's say, we'll call it 20 years ago. So they're really developing a ton more power. And if we're going to compare sports, let's compare tennis to a sport like baseball, right? And if you're going to compare injury, I would say your wrist and elbow would be very easy to compare their elbow and the amount of, let's say, UCL tears in baseball that's gone up 400% to 500% if we're including shoulder. So the ball hasn't changed, right? And the distance in pitching hasn't changed, similar to tennis. Um, but the size of kid has changed, the amount of play has changed, which means power output has changed. Um, and the significance of again, you spoke about this, and I don't want to misuse your words regarding the racket and the tension, but I imagine some of that bounce back of tension is playing a role in this wrist situation. But also when we're talking about ground force control and developing all that power that we want to from the ground up, and the bigger these youth athletes are getting, their delivery is here, right? More so than a pitcher. I would say, Dr. DeRosa and I that, evaluating pitchers and tennis players alike, their delivery, even though it seems like it's coming out of the hand, is not as important as elbow and shoulder in a pitcher, an elite pitcher that is, at the high level. When we're looking at tennis, it's a little bit of shoulder, elbow, but the finish for you guys ends up being more on the wrist, just based on where you want the ball, the spin of the ball, and all the background stuff that you guys could talk on way better than Doc and I. So what to do, right? The kids aren't going to get any smaller. Thankfully they're getting more powerful. We're not changing rackets. If anything, the tension's probably going to go up, and we're not changing the amount of hours of play. So we have to control the controllables. And that's, the pre-post prep, we'll call it. Um, and getting them acclimated to preparing their bodies for the amount of play.
Yeah, so I think that leads to, before we get to you, Dr. DeRosa, I think that leads to the specificity of training and the specificity of recovery, which in my book has gone up significantly in the recent years. Kids really today seem to understand the importance of preparatory work and post competitive work, but I wonder if enough coaches are stressing the importance of spending time on that. And that, I think you might have said this last time, Doc Romano, that it's the hidden area of development that people don't really see is the recovery. And I can tell you, just even today, I gave Valentina, my daughter, a day off and said, I just want you to do nothing and just read, sleep, do whatever you can. That some people might think that's lazy, but I just felt she really needed that. And then we went out on court in the early evening, and the energy output was incredible. So it just reminded me again of the basic thing that, hey, kids are tired today. They're doing a lot. They're on their phones. They're constantly got social events and whatnot. And so that hidden recovery is, I've borrowed your term, it's the like that's the area of growth for a lot of kids, and we're not seeing it. More is not always better. And sometimes it's more is more hand feeding and more private lessons and more one-on-one, which is highly focused specific training. And that's where we're seeing, I think, more of these overuse injuries and wrists and elbows and shoulders in particular. I'm seeing it more than I've ever seen it.
Well,
And
listen, you've always wanted a kid that wanted to do more than what was needed, right? We were always taught when we were younger as athletes that it's not what you do on the field. So we'd get there early and practice, and we'd stay late and drill the things that we messed up in practice. And most of us, as when I was a youth athlete, we were three sport athletes, so there really wasn't any concentration on one specific, let's say, muscle group. Now, if we do see a kid 10, 11, 12 that does have a specific talent in a specific area or sport, similar to my own, as you know, it almost behooves us to allow them to hone in their skills year round in that sport. Saying that, as dads and coaches, we also make sure to tell our kids it's what you do off the field that counts. Now, I think where that gets a little bumbled up in the athletic world with parents and coaches is it's not necessarily what you do off the field with lifting and speed and endurance. That's all important, but this forced recovery is as important, which is going to keep them at as close to 100% as possible. Like we go over this all the time when we talk. If you're playing 4 to 5 hours on Monday and 4 to 5 hours on Tuesday and Wednesday, and you're going to bed late, you're not sleeping, the nutrition isn't there, the hydration isn't there, there's no cellular healing. By the time you get to Friday or tournament, where are we in the body as far as output? So now we start to approach injury area, right? We all know you see someone squatting 10 sets. If they're doing a decent enough job by rep 8, 9, and 10, if you look at their form, it's completely different than when they first started.
yeah,
And that's where we're talking about how injury sets in, I think, to these risks, right? Where I'm sure they're fresh the first hour, they're feeling good. Day one, day two, day three, week one, week six, month two, month three, and there we go. We got a wrist.
yeah, you're exactly right. I love talking to you about this, and we'll forever talk about this. Dr. DeRosa, welcome. It's the first time we've had you on board in our webinars. You've been an absolute inspiration for umpteen kids that have come your way, and you've got a reputation here at Center Court working with the kids. And when I say kids, I'm also talking about some top professional players that have come your way. You've done an incredible job. So over to you. What are your thoughts on this topic? And I believe you have a presentation for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a little bit of a slideshow we're going to go through as we continue to talk about this, but it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Working with an academy and a center like you guys, you guys really put the emphasis on recovery, and that's really good to see because I work with a lot of different athletes, a lot of different sports, and a lot of times these coaches aren't, they're just trying to get the best out of their players and the most they can out of their players, and they're not kind of getting into that recovery piece. And the more and more that we continue to talk and kind of go through everything, it's great to see just how much you guys, your center, your coaches are involved with these players and how much effort and time that you guys spend in on recovering. It's not just about practicing and drills and everything like that. You guys really build in those breaks, those recovery sessions. Anytime anything comes up, you're quick to reach out, which we really appreciate. Bouncing ideas back off of each other. There's been multiple times where we looked at video. You showed me a video of your own daughter. We talked about rackets increasing the tension on the strings and how that's changing the sport. We even noticed it with a couple of the elite athletes as they've gone up in tension. Those wrist and injuries have gone up because maybe they're changing the way they swing to compensate for that. So it's been a really good relationship with the center and the academy, and I'm really just happy to be a part of it. Working with the kids is great. I love the level of athlete that you guys bring and the level of dedication. And I'm just happy that I'm able to add to their performance and to their journey with the recovery and just helping them out. It's great to hear their stories. It's great to see their wins. It's great to see them go off internationally and play high level tennis. It's That's what makes our jobs so worth it and fulfilling.
I agree with that. I can tell you that I'm thinking back probably a year and a half. Um, we had a couple of players that were here from China, and it was basically the Chinese national team, right? So I was fortunate to live and coach in China for 15 years. And I can tell you the mindset is 4 decades back. So I was once told by the national coach that if the players don't drop at the end of the day, it was not a good day. Doesn't matter what you did. If they don't drop, it was not worth it. So obviously, I don't subscribe to that. But I saw a lot of these players that arrived here really really shot, dead. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
banged up.
Banged up.
Yeah.
That would be the
Yep.
word. I mean, the wrists, and knees, and just general fatigue.
And
Um,
then mental, right? Which we talked about. Sorry to jump in, but all this fatigue that sets in with their legs and wrists and arms, and we saw a lot of these kids come in, and you could just see it on their faces that
yeah.
they almost lost a little bit of that spark.
And it's frustration, right? And so, and it's they don't unpack it, and so that the reason I'm highlighting this, one of the girls I sent your way, she's top 35 in the world WTA, great player, Julian. She was exactly in that moment, and she reached out to me about 6 months ago and said, "Oh, I'm going to come through. Is it possible that you could line me up with 2 weeks of just recovery work with Dr. Romano and his team?" That's the impact that this idea had for a top player. She went back and she played really well, but when she
We
came,
only had her for a short period, I believe, right?
she was only here for like 3 weeks, and then she
Yeah.
played US Open.
Yep.
And so she's coming back hopefully this summer, and a big part of that is she wants to work on, get this, recovery instead of conditioning. And I thought that was just brilliant. I thought like, wow, I'm sure there's a lot of players on the tour that are feeling that. Tennis is so specific in that it's a tough sport because it's repetition, small joints, moving fast. But people forget about one thing. The kids are constantly playing in 100-degree plus heat. And
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
the courts themselves can get up to 120, even.
Mhm.
So that would be something I'd like to lead in if I can with Dr. DeRosa as well. Going into summer, look, we're right now top athletes are training at Drew University, outdoor hard courts, not a lot of shade, super hot. We're going to get some heat waves coming through. That has to factor into their performances, their frustration. What do they need to manipulate other than the obvious, drinking lots of fluids, et cetera, et cetera? Is there anything else that you guys think that the kids can do in these extreme conditions between training days and then leading into a tournament? How does that look for them?
I'll talk a little bit about just hydration, and it's just not hydration, just water, drinking water during the tournament or during practice. It's pre-hydration. It's getting those electrolytes in after a day of hard work. It's replenishing all the nutrients in your body. I'm sure Dr. Romano will talk a little bit more about some of the nutrition, but just really getting that pre-hydration in, staying hydrated throughout. Getting those electrolytes back into your body at the end of the day, whether it's a liquid IV, whether it's through, some Gatorade, but you need to add those electrolytes back in as well. At the center, we offer IV hydration as well. So that's something that, if you are going to one of these tournaments that can really help. It's kind of age and size dependent, but a lot of your players, could potentially benefit from that. But that's, direct source hydration, good for pre-tournament, especially if you're going down to like a Miami at this time of the year. You're not going to play 110 real field. That's some of the stuff that you kind of look forward. You have to look into the future for. But like I said, just really that pre-hydration, staying hydrated throughout, and then making sure you're getting those electrolytes back in. Doc, if you want to touch on a little bit of the nutrition, eating right before those events, that has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, I think as Doc mentioned, I think a lot of people misconceive hydration with water. Um, Not to mention if we are dehydrated, chemically it takes us about 48 hours to even replenish. So there becomes an issue, right? You're at Drew, it's 100 degrees. We're not necessarily as prepared as we'd like to. That day there was no shade. The end of the day, they're kind of burnt from the sun, dehydrated. The next day, it's impossible, for them to be at 100%. So there are pretty good things out there now. We're trying to work on something that the center's been working on a powder that's going to be able to go into a water like a water bottle. We're not finished with it yet. I'd say in the meantime, there is a decent one that I use with my kids called Noons. It's a little tablet, and actually sparks up the drink a little bit, makes it a little bit not too fizzy. So of course you don't get that soda gassy feel, but enough to make it taste decent. You can get the sugar-free one, and it definitely does have, for the kids that are 14 and under, it's got enough electrolytes in it. And I've tested it with my own, like with the long tournament days of field hockey that are, they're hour to 2 hour long games out on turf. It's 105 on the turf. They have 3 games that day, 4 games that day. I mean, their feet are burning, their legs are burning, and it's worked. I've been able to get them to bounce back pretty quick for the next game or the next tournament. So, day before matters, day of actually truly matters. And then we go back to, are they scrolling at night? Are they getting to sleep? Are they doing any mobility work? Are they stretching? If they're in your program, we know they're serious. So there's not a lot we have to worry about as far as ensuring they're going to listen to us. I mean, to your point, that athlete that I think when we got her, she was top 100, and then when she was done with it all, she was top 30, I want to say, right? Oh, you're on mute, Conrad.
Yeah.
Apologies, apologies. 32 was her highest ranking, and she achieved
Yeah.
that within 4 months of what she'd done with you guys. That
Well,
really
listen,
impacted her.
thank you so much for even breathing that out. But at the end of the day, anyone who's listening needs to understand the elite schooling that you guys offer, the elite technique you guys offer, and the program they run through. Now, is it safe to say that we were a piece of the puzzle in her performance? I'd like to say that we were, because there are multiple facets in being an elite athlete. We've seen tons of athletes go down due to injury, bag out of tournaments, not be ready for the tournament due to fatigue. These all play a high factor in the level of play. Now, this isn't for the rec organization, right? If we're talking about rec and they're going out for fun and you're playing a couple times a week, different story, right? It's not work, it's more play. I don't think they play tennis with you guys, though. I have to be honest with you. By the time they get to you, they're
We're trying to get
competing.
them though. We're trying to
They're
get them back.
competing in tennis, but they're competing in tennis, right? There's playing tennis, and then there's competing. And if they're going to compete, like I say to my own, you have 2 choices. You're going to take this serious, and you can do everything that it takes to put yourself in the best position to succeed, or you can't complain when someone gets your spot or when the trophy's given to someone else. And that's that. So you're creating an environment for your organization to this other piece way over here, which is, hey, look, we can get all of your skills on point, endurance, the way you hit the ball, improving every day, every week of the way you guys teach, your skill, your speed, your angles. But if they're going to show up tired, and they're going to show up where they can give you only a good hour to an hour and a half, and then they're slowing down and bagging out because of a hamstring, or my legs are sore, or my arm is tired, or my wrist is hurt. There's nothing you can do with that athlete. You could try and tweak their delivery. You could try and tweak their serve, tweak their backhand. I mean, we did this years ago. I remember
Mhm.
coming up with different ways of a backhand to work around these injuries. And at the end of the day, some of those, athletes do need tweaking, right? Because their delivery is off and we're not noticing it until we slow motion the video. But a lot of it is the recovery portion, and they're just not bouncing back as fast as they need to because they're not. Then I'm not saying they don't want to do the work. Maybe they don't know it's available. And that's why you're offering us up to let them know there's
Correct.
more out there and you should be treated like a pro athlete even before you come pro.
Correct. Before I
I
asked
think
Dr. DeRosa if you wanted to share a presentation, you know, I hear this all the time. We're really disadvantaged coming from the Northeast because tennis is, as you know, it's an outdoor sport, played in the heat, played in the hard courts. If you go to play in California in like March, which we did this year, they had the hottest days on record during this tournament. Kids were dropping like flies. I mean, well, I was really proud to say that our kids that we took down there, which I thought would struggle, absolutely did not because we employed a lot of this prehydration, get out in the sun. We were training in the hottest parts of the day,
Mhm.
making sure they knew this is what I'm going to get. Versus a lot of the other kids from the Northeast were training indoors, training early mornings, late nights, like avoiding, I would say,
The
the
heat.
hardest part of the
Yeah.
day. And they really, really, really struggled. So that's something for us specific to Center Court and you guys where we're located. What tips could you offer for, we're not even at the hottest period yet. I can tell you uh, July 7, 8, 9, 10, around that time is the Clay Court Nationals in North Carolina, and it is blistering heat. And
And
unfortunately,
humid.
unfortunately, my daughter couldn't get through. She had heat stroke and had to pull out. So we learned a lot from that. And then after that, the in Atlanta in August is the Hard Court Nationals, which is equally blistering hot with incredible humidity. So, are there any kind of tips you can throw out to any of the parents to help their kids to be ready coming from the Northeast?
That's that prehydration mechanism. I mean, the day of, the problem is the day of, the way the body breaks down liquid, especially throughout the tournament or throughout the match, it's not very good. When you see NFL or NBA and they come off the sideline on a timeout and they're chugging water, there's a high percentage of those going back in cramping. And they say the cramping is due to dehydration. And usually it's not. It's due to the fact that your body can't really process that much liquid as I mean, they're thirsty, right? So they're chugging as
Sure.
much as they can in the 30 seconds they get, and they're running back out there. And that's not it. I mean, the prep is everything. So if we can get as much protein and as many electrolytes in their system the day before as possible, and again, I know I said this already, I've tested it with my own. Last year we went out and played in Arizona in the summer, and again, it's similar to what you're talking about, 110 degrees on the turf. And similar to your story, I imagine they were prepared as Arizonians for the heat at that time of year, and there were kids just bagging out and going down with dehydration, and we made it through. And I think it's maybe they take it for granted a little bit more because they're there, as opposed to, we have to prepare for the cold when it's really cold, and we have to
Mhm.
prepare for the heat when it's really hot. And I think maybe we're just a little bit more mindful of these seasons, which maybe gives us a little bit of an edge. And I think you've seen us sneak away in these sports lately over the last couple of years due to that. In baseball, tennis, some of the outdoor all year round lacrosse. We're just a little bit more prepared than some of these West Coast and Southern teams.
Yeah, that's
One
great.
of the things that I noticed, kind of being down when I was being an athletic trainer down in East Carolina, we were down in North Carolina. That's where we were based. So we did a lot of the preseason football. Just trying to cool down that body as quick as you can after. So you want to be able to, get in an ice bath, if you can at the end of the day, have some frozen towels, get them on them as soon as they're done with their activity. Just being able to kind of cool down, and then also, like Doc said, that prehydration, rehydration, just really getting those electrolytes back in the body because you're going to be sweating profusely. You're going to be getting out all of those electrolytes. So just avoid those high sugar packets, really work on cooling the body down as quick as you can, whether it be an ice bath, just frozen towels, just anything cold. Put them on the neck, under the arms, just kind of those really good heating points of the body and just kind of really cool it down.
Great tips, guys. And I hope everyone listening who is about to go into a heavy summer of competing is really taking point on this. I think a lot of the kids today, there's a fad that's going around, which it's helpful. They wear these kind of headphones that blow air and it's just convection cooling. It feels nice, but I'm not sure it's really helping. So Really,
Not, listen, it's not bad, right? But that internal chemistry is absolutely everything. And we've
yeah,
studied these pros, we've studied different sports, we've studied different body types. And the bottom line is number one, they have to be specific and test things out, right? Pre-tournament, I always explain to some of our high level athletes, like try things out before your tournament. Like don't, I like the noons right now for my own because I tested them out before a serious tournament, seemed to work, so we employed them into a real life, a real competitive weekend, as we'll call it, right? Saying that, you got to see what works for your system and for you. So one of the things I think we could do is create some sort of a generic cadence 2 days and day before for you guys to maybe push out to your athletes to follow,
be
but with
amazing.
a little bit of a disclaimer, letting them know, like, look, everybody has different genetics, a different background, a different way of processing this, protein and hydration. How much they need compared to how much you need and I need and Doc needs are all potentially going to be different. So get to know your body, try these things out, see what works for you, but see what works for you. Like I think Conrad, you preach this, we'll call it at the office, which your office is on the court. You want to make your mistakes in practice,
Right here, yep.
right? You want to get tired, you want to get broken down, you want to see how you bounce back from what you eat and drink during the week with you in practice. Journal, write it down. How'd you feel after that day? What did you do day before? So at your level and at the level of your athletes, it might not be a bad idea for us to put something together which helps them journal their week, what worked, what didn't, how they felt, and then, of course, we can get into the whole wrist situation and the whys.
That sounds amazing. We talk a lot about what I call notice rate, and not everyone's cognitively aware of how they feel or what they did when they felt great. So we do a lot of journaling, a lot of logging. It's kind of mandatory for the kids. And what I ask them to do is notice when you've had an incredible performance. What did you eat the day before? What did you do leading in? What did you do that morning? What was it that created the right mindset for you that day? How many hours sleep did you have? And so we got to repeat that, right? It's kind of mastering performance. And
Well, you're doing two things saying that, Conrad. I mean, I don't know if your crew knows it, but there's a mindset situation there that you want to be able to reproduce. And it's not a learned behavior, it's a feeling, right? And can you reproduce that feeling pre-tournament or during the tournament and therefore bouncing back from your misses and your balls that are out compared to the ones that are in. And then you're also hitting the recovery side of journaling. So if we can be a part of the journaling mechanism, it's that maybe a little section over here, this is all your mindset stuff and how you felt when you did bad and what you did about it and how you felt when you did good and how to reproduce these feelings so that in these high level moments, you're able to put the face on, get back out, and do your thing. But maybe we take a little portion of that paper on the recovery aspect of things, and they start to be mindful of what they did eat the day before, what they drank the day before, what seems to be working and what's not working, and then they almost become their own chemistry project.
I love that. Absolutely. Look, we could talk till the cows come home, but until the kids really lock in on this is I played amazing that day. And I'm often doing that. Hey coach, I had this incredible result. I beat this kid who was all right, that's awesome. Let's backtrack. What did you do the day before? What time did you go to bed? How many hours did you practice? What do we and I'm finding more and more, which goes back to the forced recovery thing. Their weeks tapered down towards competition. What do
Yeah.
most people do? They taper up. And the
Yep.
kid gets to competition thinking, I did enough, I did more, I did more. But actually, they're getting there mentally fatigued, physically fatigued, and probably slightly dehydrated. The parents need to really understand this. Like
Yeah.
the dip, the dip before the peak, it has to happen. You can't
Yes.
go plateau and crescendo. It just doesn't work. It's got to be crescendo early in the week, dip down low, and then we look for that crescendo again towards the tournament. I think
Well,
all
listen,
the
if you take a sport like boxing or UFC, right? And we've treated a ton of that. My father's profession was a professional boxing trainer. Look at what they do in their, we'll call it their 6 week camp. Some of these guys just train year round. They do exactly what you're talking about. 2 weeks before, they're going pretty hard, sparring 3 days, 3 times a day. They're really on point. But that week before is exactly what you're talking about. They start running a little bit less. They start sparring a lot less. They start just working on mobility, nutrition, hydration. As long as they've prepared mentally for the weeks prior, then that week that they have to kind of let things rebuild and rebound, they are at 110% come fight night.
Yep.
So that is a huge thing that you should probably be continuing to put
Mhm.
out to your crew, which is, I listen, we all want that kid that wants to put in the most amount of work possible, outwork your opponent, get on the field knowing you did all the work match. Like that, thank God we have that athlete, right? But there is a time and a place where they really need to just feel like they did the work, time to let their body heal. They're not going to lose anything in a week. They're not going to lose technique. They're not going to lose endurance, right? They're not going to lose speed. They're not going to lose that edge if they allow themselves to come down that week, rest, and then come out shining when it's time.
We talk a lot about, in the office about the tank. You want to go into competition with your tank being 100, 110% full. You don't want to go into into that competition with the 50% tank, 50% energy level. And that's one of the things that I think that force recovery really focuses on is getting that tank back to that 110%, under to that 100%, whether it be, journaling like you got. I think that's awesome. Getting in the mindset, journaling, kind of figuring out what's working during practice, and then employing that for competition is amazing. Figuring out what drills are working for them, and then also tapering down. You really want to be kind of on that upswing where your tank's at that 110%. That's one of the things that we tell our athletes all the time when we're in the office.
Wow, we're hitting some gold. I'm loving it. I could talk for hours about this. That's the whole point of why we do this.
Yeah.
Um, Dr. DeRosa, did we want to go through some
Yeah, we
specific
can.
details? I think you want to talk about wrists and
Yeah, we
rotational
put
force.
together a quick presentation on wrist and shoulder
Let's do
injuries and
that.
just kind of breaking down some of the video that you sent us over. So I will share my screen. Let me know if you guys could see that.
Conrad, since we spent so much time going over the intrinsic factors of healing, rather than going slide by slide, as you and I spoke earlier, we may lose some. We can get to the nitty gritty of you know why you may have like forget about the whole fatigue thing. What the amount of stress that your body is creating to finish up your delivery, it ends up being the real issue. So what Doc did was he had our guy kind of slow motion a serve or two and a backhand or two. And Doc, if you could kind of freeze frame
Absolutely.
going through the motion of you actually get it up. And I know Conrad, you guys watch so much film. And I know you guys go over so much technique, but anyone who ends up watching this later might understand this a little bit better. We call it ground force control and how they're really really harnessing all the power from the bottom all the way up, and then you're talking about that 100 plus miles an hour finishing at the wrist. Like, and then they have to figure out which way they want the ball to go with the wrist thousands of times a week, not even hundreds. That's way
Doc,
more than a pitcher.
you want to start with some of the youth athletes and then end with the professional, or you want to start professional and work down?
As you wish. That's whatever's best.
We could start here with we'll start on this end over here with one of the youth athletes, and you could kind of see how he's going through his mechanics. And Doc, if you want to talk about kind of that whip, and let me know when you want me to stop it.
All right, keep going. So now he's starting to generate power from that back part of his foot and he's distributing it to the front, right? Stop. Look at the elbow. Now that might be great technique, but that has all now been distributed all the way up, out. It's now into the elbow and it's about to come out the wrist. Go ahead. Boom. So we're talking about all that power that he generated on that from ground force, right? Both of those feet, taking it from the back foot to distributing it up to the front foot, out the hip, up the back, and then finishing right there, right? So any one of your athletes that's not consistently getting these things worked on off the field, off the court, similar to your athlete that went from 100 to 32, um, they're almost setting themselves up for failure, right? Because it's almost like how don't they get injured after 1,000 of these? Even if their technique is perfect, you're still looking at a major, major happening here, right? It's not just one little tap.
Yeah, and I think, Pay, if I can chime in as a biomechanist myself, it's the deceleration moment that where the pain really kicks in. So this guy weighs probably, I'm gonna say 100 pound, 110 pound. And as he gets up, all that drive, ground force times three, times four, up to the ball leads to acceleration, then deceleration. And I don't think that we train enough the small ligaments, the small muscles, the those decelerators, accelerators. We got to make sure they're strong enough. And yeah, we can
We
see it.
know that's the one thing we've been talking about for the past 2 years, Conrad, is what happens after you hit the ball, after
Mhm.
you hit the golf ball, after you hit the baseball, after you've pitched the ball. We don't work on the other half, right? We always work on how do we load, get to harness all that energy and get rid of it, right? It's everything's about load, load, load. Great, but no one ever talks about what you just said, which is after you hit the ball, now what? And I think we caught one of your athletes on deceleration and bounce back into his ready mode of when his
Mhm.
wrist was really going on him. It wasn't even the serve, the forehand, or the backhand. It was after the ball was released and him. We caught it in video, if I remember. Him snapping back and getting back into his ready position was where his area of pain came from, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
absolutely.
Yeah, it was his comeback. It was he would get rid of everything properly. His mechanics were good, but we noticed something in slow motion on his way back to getting ready. He did something weird with his wrist and didn't even know it. Like he wasn't, he's not thinking about.
It was actually one of our Japanese players who you're
Yes.
exactly right, it was Zaki Hiro, but we didn't notice that. You noticed that actually. So we brought that back to training, and he was halfway back to being perfect after a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't even think we did much therapy on him. I think that happened to be a true biomechanical error that no one, I mean, we just happened to pick it up because we were watching video on his delivery, right? We were trying to figure out from our end, the we'll call it the doctor's end, what we may see could be going wrong because we don't know nearly as much as you about the tennis mechanical end and see if we could put our brains together. And it turned out that he seemed to be doing everything right until the very end when he came back to get ready, he was doing something really wonky with his wrist,
Yeah.
And I
which
think one
I'm
of the
sure
important,
is so common, right? Because we focus on load and delivery. Same with the baseball player getting ready to hit. How can we load and get to the ball? We don't worry about after the ball. No one talks about after the ball. Golf, load, get to the ball, head down. No one talks about the other 50% of the swing, which now you have to slow that 100 mile an hour racket down.
exactly. Yep. And I think one of the biggest things that we see, we reference baseball a lot because we're both baseball players, Doc's son plays baseball. But majority of the injuries, I would say even probably close to 90% is in that deceleration phase. So the fact that you guys are recognizing that and focusing some training, it's that slowdown phase where a lot of things start to go because the ligaments and the tendons are at such a load, and then having to stop them that quickly is so hard to do, especially when you're adding heavy equipment, whether it
And we're
be
not training for it, right? So,
right.
Conrad, we can also do that. I feel we did it. I noticed it in field hockey, which was a brand new sport for me due to my daughter. Most of her ailments, we'll call it shoulder, came from her fall after she hit the ball. No load, no hit. It was where she was finishing started really bothering her shoulder. And it turns out this is exactly where they wanted you to finish in field hockey. But for her body and for her muscle type and for her load, it wasn't it did not do her shoulder justice, and it was her weak side, right? In field hockey you can only play righty. It was her left side once she finished and let go that ended up being the problem. It took me, I'm not going to lie to you, it took me a little bit to figure this one out because what are we all thinking? It's got to be the front foot. It's got to be where she's seeing the ball. It's got to be where she's hitting. It's got to be her, after she hits. And it was really after she let go and where she ended up. But what we could do is be a little bit more tennis specific and come up with some of these deceleration exercises that seem to be really, really working for some of our high level athletes that are, again, very similar in sport. We're calling it, this is a rotational sport and it's a delivery sport. So we can say it's a lot like baseball, it's a lot like field hockey, and it's a lot like lacrosse, right? Of course, we're using different equipment, but it's the same type of mechanism.
Yeah, just if I can pipe in one quick story. My daughter is a highly competitive player, and she went through a moment where she had real forearm pain. It wasn't wrist, it wasn't elbow, and it wasn't shoulder. It was forearm. And as a biomechanist, I'm looking at a lot of her videos. I'm thinking, what's she doing here? And I realized she wasn't in her backswing. She wasn't extending her arm, and she was trying to produce power. So the easiest ways were her to pull from the pec, shorten the lever, and just slap the ball. And the finish was not happening. So the load was not being shared through the rotation and through the joints. We worked with Dr. DeRosa, I think maybe 5 sessions in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
She became pain free and went and played a tournament. I was very concerned. I was sure she's not going to get through the tournament. She got through pain free, and we've not felt it since. What you guys did was you were massaging, you were needling out, and you had her do the stem treatment, which I'm
Mhm.
sure was magic for her. So yeah, that was a technical thing that you guys helped us get through.
So you got
Yeah.
to put it together on both ends, right? It's three ends. It is the body healing cellularly from the hydration nutrition standpoint, mechanically, which would be you guys. Are they mechanically doing the we'll call it the delivery or the exercise properly? We'll use the squat again as an example. To fatigue, you're going to squat differently at rep 10. And then third would be where we fall into play. And that, are things evening out? Are joints locking up? Are muscles firing properly? And can we prevent some of these overuse things from happening? Probably over 50%. There's probably over 50% of the overuse injuries that happen are preventable if they're paying attention to these three things. One, listening to their coach. Two, making sure that they're forcing this recovery thing that we're calling forced recovery. And then three, getting checked, being proactive and getting into, we always tell our patients not to look at our place like a doctor's office, as you know, right? This is your athletic stop. Come in, get looked at. Let's even you out. Let's keep your joints moving. Let's keep your muscles elongated. Let's take a look at you and see how you're doing, and then let's move on. And this is something that they have to do proactively instead of reactively, which tends to be most athletes, right? They just keep moving until they can't. And now all of a sudden they're seeing 10 different doctors, massage therapists. I got a chiro over here. My ortho says this. My neighbor said that. I have an athlete friend that had the same injury and they did this. And they go down a rabbit hole quick.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, look, I honestly I won't, but I could name two handfuls of players that parents were a little bit resilient to. Hey, let's go try this. Let's go try this. Let's go try this. Eventually, they did, and you guys got them out of injury. I could name 10 players like that. You guys got them out. You gave them a plan. You gave them a follow up. You gave them some activities to do at home. You called on them to think about technique. You got involved with me. I was able to get some images to you. We did
Mhm.
this whole kind of
Well, and that's I think
360.
what your group needs to understand is like when we have buy-in from the head honcho, right? Like we do as some of the elite programs in the area, whether it be football or wrestling or baseball or field hockey, and we have our our heads around an athlete, they have to understand how crucial that is for their development. The fact that you're not just blowing it off and saying, yeah, just go or do whatever you need. Like Doc will attest to this. Like you're same day texting us, what do you think? What are you feeling? What should we do? Like you're as much in the game of this as we are.
Mhm.
And that's when you get some results.
I fully agree. I mean, again, I don't want to throw names out, but we've had kids that have had persistent injuries that we know are overuse and those type of injuries. but they're going to see a medical clinician type of doctor, which is
Hmm.
not translating back to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And often I'll ask those kids, can you ask your that doctor to reach out to me or to send me some type of report and let's see where we're at. And I get zero, absolutely zero.
Yeah.
With you guys, within
Yeah.
25 minutes, we're talking about, all right, I'll drop them off, I'll bring them down. I often bring the kids myself because I want to explain this is this kid, this is how they do it. And so that's something I think you can't buy that care. Like that type of care, it just
Or
happens.
that type of coach.
Right.
Appreciate that and that type of recovery team. So, I'm proud of what we're doing, and I just want everyone that listens to this to understand that that matters a lot. The follow up, the kind of continued. You can't go one time and stop. It's one, two, three, four, maybe five times before we get a 10% improvement. But we've got to commit to the cause.
And I think one of the important things that I want to highlight is that we're not looking to take you off the court. That's one of our biggest things. We're not looking to take you out of court. We're not going to tell you that you can't compete. We want to get to it. We want to prevent it, and we want to make sure it stops so you can continue to compete at the high level that you are competing at. A lot of these doctors, and sometimes get a bad name when you go see an orthopedist or something like that. First thing they do is write 6 to 8 weeks of rest, and that's not something that we're looking to do. We're looking to build with your coaches a program, tailor it for you, keep you on the court, keep you training, and getting you back to that competition as quick as we can.
And then
The other,
hopefully explaining to them that sometimes even our not such competitive athletes are coming through the door, and we talk to them as if they're pros, high school or college, and they laugh. And I always look at them and say, what would be the difference between you and a pro other than you haven't made it to that level yet? You're training the same, if not more. You just don't have your hands on what the pro locker room has their hands on. What we're trying to do with you, and what you're trying to do with your athletes and parents is let them know that you have your hands on a pro locker room, right? The ability to come in and either get manual therapy, get stretched out, get stim, get adjusted. We're bringing in infrared, salt room, cryotherapy. The quintessential D1 or pro locker room is what we're really passionate about. Do we love all the other stuff? Of course. We are still a doctor's office, right? We still do physicals and we do a bunch of other things on the adult end of medicine. But Doc and I really do have a passion for that youth athlete as you do. And seeing their progression is what drives us daily to research, to learn what we can do with them that some of the pros are doing that work. Like we've done our due diligence for the public already. We know what works. We know the bells and whistles that don't. And you really have to sit through a ton to get there, right? There's just so much on Instagram and on Facebook and
uh,
TikTok, and you don't know if they're promoting it, they're marketing it, or if they're really doing it, right?
Right.
These high level athletes are getting paid to drink Red Bull and Monster. So you go, oh, he's drinking Monster Energy drink. That's got to be something that's going to give me energy for the tournament.
Doc, you just touched a raw nerve with me. Again, I take nothing away from passionate parents. I truly appreciate what passionate parents are doing. But you cannot watch a video of a 15-year pro player who has some crazy wrist lag and go out and teach a 10-year-old kid to do that. The minute you do that, we get bicep tendon problems, we get wrist pain problems. We have to understand a lot of these young kids, their wrists aren't even formed properly yet. And so we're copying and mimicking with an iPad, feeding 1,000 balls to the kid and we're creating the problem. And so parents have to, I say to parents, listen, there's so much good coaching online, but who's filtering for you?
Right.
Like, ask me. I'll tell you, yes, this is good. This is trash. And we got to be careful with that. And again, in these repetitive sports, small kids trying to produce rotational power, often not rotating, often freezing shoulders and hips and just working with arms and wrists, we
You don't
know,
even know how to separate it, right?
and that's something for me that's really I
And
think
by the way, similar to like the golf conversation, the tighter they get and the less worked on they get, to your point, I think if I look at tennis and the rotation that has to happen from the bottom first and then, creating the torque, and then the power goes out. We see it in these types of rotational sports where they get so tight, to your point, everything kind of, they load and then everything moves together. And then there's your stress on the joints. They're still going to get there, right? Shoulder, elbow, and wrist are going to get to the ball, whether it's a baseball, whether it's a golf ball, or whether it's a tennis ball. The problem is they're not getting that torque or that load that they're really looking for because they can't even separate. Everything's so tight
Yeah.
and locked up, they don't feel it yet, right? So now their ball's going sideways and they don't know why. So then what do? They change their technique. They change their wrist angle. They change their racket. And that's usually probably not the problem.
You, I mean, you're spot on. I mean, everything we're touching on here, we've talked today about recovery, we've talked about hydration, we've talked about how to deal with the heat, we've talked about so many important things. But I think at the end, for me, the most important thing that we should highlight for everyone is taking care of yourself. And that means doing what you need to do to be better, not looking sideways. We tell everyone winners look straight ahead, losers look sideways. So look ahead at what you need to do. If it's less time on court, I'm all for that. If it's less private attention because it's so focused, I'm all for that. If it's more rest, more recovery, more shadow work, we implemented this year a skill acquisition recovery program where any kid that was injured, we would create a specific program for them. Rather than miss training, come down. We'll send a coach with you. There's a battery of drills, and these are the ones that you need to do. So you do them with us, you do them at home.
You know what to avoid and what not to based on the injury. Yeah.
And the other major problem we see with a lot of kids is tennis is so heavy on one side that the counterbalance is
The
off.
imbalance. Sure.
So parents need to also understand that if you can do it with your right arm 350 times, make sure you're throwing 150 to 200 on the left arm.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, look, I think again, I hope we can do a follow up. Any final words you guys might have, please go ahead. And what we'll do from here is Ari and I will send this out. I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of people asking us, "Hey, how do we find you guys?
Yeah.
What can we do, etc."
I will share the presentation that you can kind of tag along and send with that as well. It has all of our information on it, what the recovery center can do. I'll share just a couple of quick slides of what we have to offer, kind of what we can do as well. This is just kind of a little bit of how our athletic recovery center gets you back into play. Just some of the different modalities that we have to offer, whether it be the Normatec compression sleeves to push out that lactic acid, speed up the recovery, um, sports chiropractic, getting those joints moving, manual therapy, just opening everything up. We have shockwave therapy now. Doc talked a little bit about the infrared sauna, the cryotherapy, the salt rooms, all of that. We have return to play protocols. We have recovery and hydration protocols as well. And then, like we talked about in the beginning, pre-hydration and nutrition counseling.
Yeah, I think one of our controller that's on the line now is kind of hitting in the chat box, which probably is the best way. Conrad, it seems like we do this every time we get on, right? We start and say, hey, listen, we're going to talk about this topic here. And then we get so passionate. It's almost like we all have ADHD, right? We get into all the stuff that's going to get you to the level that you need. It's all great stuff, and anyone that rewatches it, hopefully gets something out of one piece to this. Saying that, what she recommended, which I think is a good idea, is possibly like a monthly newsletter focused on pushed out to you guys, which you could push out to your crew, focused on specific things that we talked about tonight, or something special that you might reach out to us on and say, hey, look, I'd love to push this, deceleration cadence out, or this hydration cadence out, or this mobility work that you guys have been working on with some of these other athletes that seems to work. I have one last story, and again, we don't talk names here, but it was one of your athletes who had come in, and last year he had surgery on his wrist from a cyst, and it came back. So super. I wouldn't say depressed, but just a little bit discouraged. Obviously, it's his wrist. He's a highly competitive tennis player. It's his dominant hand, and this is one of those ones you scratch your head at, right? Because at the end of the day, did tennis cause it? Yes, but does tennis cause cysts? Generally, no. Just happened to cause one on his wrist. So the goal was to figure out, number one, surgery didn't work. Removing this cyst didn't work, right? Because it came back. So
Multiple surgeries, doc.
yes. So the goal was not to allow for more scar tissue to develop and potentially create some sort of a hindrance on range of motion. Now, I got to be honest with you. I've never had this type of cyst on this side of the wrist where it was in an elite tennis athlete, right? We've seen ganglion cysts all over the hand, but generally not at hinge. So it didn't take a stroke of genius to know that, okay, the amount of tension he's creating with his wrist is obviously causing this buildup, which, okay, and we're not taking that away. The goal was to figure out how we can create an environment for this wrist to be managed properly and still play tennis. And he's trusting parents. He's a trusting athlete. We hit him straight from the beginning. Like, look, here's the deal. We can drain it. We can keep you away from surgery. See how we do. We're gonna have to try a few different things with you because it's particular to you and see what works. And we finally came up with a cadence that made this thing go down, get reabsorbed, and then get him back on the court and continue to play. Now, there was no promises made there because, again, we're honest folk. We're not going to give you a false hope if it's just not there. But we are going to think about the athlete we're dealing with. We're going to deal with you. We're going to look at video if we have to. As you know, we have turf, we have a cage, we've had you in, we've looked at athletes together. And I don't think, I mean, maybe there is, but I haven't seen that kind of passion and connection between an elite program and a doctor's office that is able to host this kind of we'll call it back to play and recovery, right? Because it's both. You're going to send us in athletes that are already potentially injured. And then from these, what we're trying to accrue are athletes that are proactive, previous to injury, that are getting in and getting the care that they need. So maybe I think the monthly, I don't know what we want to call it, but some kind of a monthly push to just remind them of what's out there. And again, anyone that's listening, while I love Conrad for saying, hey, make sure they know where you are, and there's a QR code, and there's our address, and we might be reaching people that are nowhere near us, and we're happy to be able to do that. We enjoy educating, we enjoy doing our research, we enjoy our data. So sounds great. I'm hoping that we get to see some new faces in the door, and that keeps the doors revolving and keeps us busy. But at the end of the day, it's really about us getting on here and at the elite level banging heads and figuring out how to better off these athletes that are just doing so well and putting in so much time and energy and effort.
I just want to touch on that story real quickly. And I think one of the biggest things why that athlete's doing so well is he stayed committed to the program. That the one with the cyst, he's been coming in weekly. He's been really dedicated to staying on top of that thing. And we've been able to mitigate and kind of just slow down that response to everything that he's been having. And he's been able to play. He's been increasing some hours. He's been playing tournaments. So it's been a great success story, but it really goes to show the commitment of the team, the coaches, and the athletes. If you don't buy in, you're not going to get some of the results that you're looking for, like Conrad said, but you really got to buy in. It may not take 1 or 2 sessions, it may take 5 or 10, but you will get some improvement at the end of it. And I think staying committed and just knowing that we're going to work together as a full team is where this whole product really shines.
Or if we get lucky, they've really listened to this. They don't have the pain that we're talking about or the injury, but they really now start to focus on that forced recovery mechanism of the sport. So again, we have the three levels of this elite sport, right? It's what they do on and off the court to better themselves at tennis. It's what they do with you and the amount of work they put in and being present. And it's what they do with us or someone like us to prevent these injuries from happening. Let's face it, we can't prevent a badly sprained ankle. They dive for a ball, contusion on the knee, contusion on the elbow. Some of these things, there's no prevention in some of these sports. It's mitigation. Doc used a great word. It's injury mitigation sometimes. How do we mitigate the injury? How do we get you back on the field faster, on the court faster? But if you look at the statistics, elbow shoulder up 400%, 500%, ACL tear up 400%, 5 to 1 female to male. There's a real problem here right now, right? And you have all these prevention programs, and things are only getting worse. So we happen to feel that a lot of this may be stemming from the inside and the lack of cellular recovery and the lack of the ability for these things to heal, and from the outside, which is the power output is that's yielding, it isn't matching the growth plate or the young tendon that is still there. That's where I think that I think there's two sides to this story. What's going on inside and the healing mechanisms, and the fact that these kids are bigger, they are stronger, they are hitting. I mean, Comrade, let me ask you this, and we could finish on this. 10, 15 years ago, what was the hardest miles per hour you would see a 15-year-old hit a ball?
Oof. We talk about serving, maybe 105,
How about now?
125, one even more. I got a 15-year-old that can put a ball down at 140. That's huge, huge power.
So let's compare that to, let's say, our elite pitching world of 15, 20 years ago. If a kid at 16, 17 through 90, this kid was potentially getting drafted out of high school. Now, it's a dime a dozen someone throwing 90. They're bigger, they're stronger, but certain things still remain the same, right? Your ligaments, your growth plates, your tendons, those are things that are still going to be reserved for the aging process. As big and tall as they get, that output has increased, but some of these things are still going to remain the same. So, I don't know. It's a really good chat, Conrad. We always love getting on with you and talking shop. So
And,
anytime.
and me, guys. I mean, look, this is for me. I'm all about the 360. The whole circle around the athlete, and as a former pro player, as a coach, as a biomechanist, as a business, leader, as a academy director, as a dad who's running kids who are really serious about tennis, and Valentina's #1 in the country in Australia and 3, 4 in the country in the US. I want to set them up for success, and I understand success is not today. I understand that success is longevity. Like the one word I talk about is longevity. We can all be stars young, stars in the middle, stars at college. I'm looking for longevity. I'm looking for health. I'm looking for like the right mindset, total body awareness and control. You guys have been unbelievable with my own kids and my own family. I don't speak highly enough. I can't speak highly enough. I mean, I hope everyone that listens really takes on board the message. We can all dial it up on, more hours on court, more hours on privates, more hours on, but we need to dial it up on the other areas. I think that's the bottom line.
It
Agreed,
was
as important.
absolute pleasure to be on with you guys today. I think one of the biggest things you say is the 360 view. That's one of the things we talk about in the center all the time. We look at the patient as a whole. We're not one of those typical centers. We really have that patient-centered care and patient-centered focus, same way you guys do with your athletes, and we have that same mindset. So again, it was an absolute pleasure for me to join this time. Looking forward to doing it again. Can't talk enough about the program and how easy it is to work with you guys and just to keep this going.
Thank you so much, guys. Have an awesome night. My plan is to catch up again at the end of summer
Yes.
and set everyone up for the year ahead. In the meantime, anyone that needs anything, please reach out to me. Love to get you involved with the guys. So thanks so much, guys. Appreciate all your time tonight.
Thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Thank you.